They're killing off Woody. Yes, it's Dumb Leaders in the News, episode 48 of the Dumb Leaders podcast. And today we just look at some of the headlines on Google, from Google, when you type in Dumb Leaders and you look at what's happening in the news. Now, the biggest and most scariest thing that's happening in the news at the moment is the little bit of argy-bargy that's happening between America and a couple of other countries. You know, maybe China's in there, definitely Iran is in there. And it was really interesting that when you do a search for dumb leaders on Google, one of the first pieces of news is this one. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, in a televised address, called the proposed new sanctions outrageous and idiotic, and said the White House was being afflicted by mental retardation. To which Donald Trump responded by saying, "I don't think their leadership is very smart." Now, since Trump has been in the, and I'm not here to stand on either side of politics here, but ever since Donald's been in the White House, we've never been short of a dumb leader quote. It's really quite interesting, and you do it now. Go out to Google and do a dumb leader. Just search dumb leaders and then look at the news barrage and in the news category, and I'm sure that you'll find there are things in there around Donald Trump. So, hey, they're killing off Woody. Oh, my God, what are they doing? From all reports, Toy Story 4, that movie franchise that's been known to bring a tear to the eye of the odd grown man, including myself, is killing off Woody. What? Woody is the rootinest, tootinest cowboy of all time, and there's goddamn a snake in his boots. And apparently in Toy Story 4, he's riding off into the sunset with his beloved Bo Peep. Now, I'm at a loss. I haven't watched Toy Story 4, and it's something I now obviously have to do. But what would Andy think? What would Andy think? What will everyone else think? This is Toy Story. This is Toy Story. It's built on Woody. It's Toy Story 4. And I guess in so many ways it's life after Andy. But what I find incredible about this, what I find, and it might be dumb. I'm thinking it's dumb, but it could also be a masterstroke. So when a movie has an overriding theme and and TV shows have an overriding theme or an overriding hero, well, once that hero or the theme seems to be muted or dilated or moved on, we tend to see a huge loss of popularity around that franchise. You know, just look at The Walking Dead. While The Walking Dead is still popular, the series from when it started to where it is now has changed remarkably. So there was a real storyline in the early days, and then as it's evolved and as it's moved, we've seen much more intense videography. We've seen much more intensity around warring humans as opposed to humans against, zombies. But one of the biggest things here in relation to Walking Dead was the constants of the main characters. Now, Rick is no longer there, or from what I read, because I've stopped watching The Walking Dead. From what I read, Rick's involved in a time warp or something. I really can't make sense of it. But when we say goodbye to things, and when the hero is no longer there, we see a shift in what made that movie franchise, that TV episode, what made it great. And what we've seen, what I've seen particularly, and once again, more an opinion piece, and because the ratings have certainly slowed in the case of The Walking Dead, but they're certainly gangbusters still. But we see people turning off, higher production values, greater intensity around wars, and fighting with other humans, gun scenes. A lot of people have walked away, and I guess in many ways potentially some dumb leadership as we start to see that storyline peter out. And really the question has to be asked, what will Toy Story do without Woody? Does this signal the end of the franchise? Now, the franchise, believe it or not, is 25 years old. 25 years old, I know. And I really thought at the end of Toy Story 3, now, this is really weird, a guy in his 50s talking about Toy Stories, but Toy Story 3 was made in 2010, and I actually thought that was a really clean break. It had a natural ending. Andy was heading off to college, and the toys were getting a new life with Bonnie. And that's the scene where some grown men that I know, including myself, will shed a tear, because it's one of those defining moments in life where we move from boyhood into more adulthood. And I know that I'm not the only one that sheds a tear at that particular scene where Andy says a final goodbye to his toys. But it was a natural ending. It was sad. It was a defining moment. It was a natural ending. Now, I haven't seen Toy Story 4, but I'm confused. Firstly, I'm confused they brought it out, for starters, because I thought we had a natural ending with Toy Story 3. And then from what I'm reading, we've got the removal of Woody at the end of Toy Story 4, which makes me wonder what happens if they want to put out a Toy Story 5, which no doubt they will, because there will be a level of success in Toy Story 4. So let's just wait and see, shall we? Hey, look, another thing that's dominated the headlines when you search for dumb leaders is Brexit. So thank God we've got Trump and we've got Brexit, because they dominate the headlines. So, and once again, you can find out anything from Latin dancing right through to suspending Parliament. There's so many news stories to walk through. But hasn't this been dragging on, right? Seriously, the original vote was held in June 23 on 2016. That's 3 years ago. And the government in England is still no closer to actually formalising or getting close to exiting the European Union. So this is ridiculous. And this is what happens when you set in train a series of events without actually thinking about how you finally execute the stuff, right? It seemed like a good idea at the time. Someone wrote a song about that. It seemed like a good idea at the time to ask the people if they wanted to leave the EU. I'm sure that there were multiple reasons for doing that. The people sort of said, pretty filled with apathy, apathetic, I suppose. Yeah, why not? So that was their response. And ever since then, we've just seen this revolving series of dumb leaders trying to navigate the minefield that is absolutely Brexit. So thank God for Brexit. Thank God for Trumpy keeping those news stories flowing when you do a search for dumb leaders. Hey, look, I really want to raise this one. I'm going to look at Australian sport. We've got the Australian Football League, the AFL. Many here in Australia are concerned with the impact of sports betting and the impact that sports betting is having on our sports. In the NRL, which is the National Rugby League here, another one of our major sports, every team seemingly is sponsored by a different sports betting agency. It's just tied in almost irreversibly now with our national sporting landscape. We've got sporting betting adverts in every game that's being telecast. We've got every media show. We've got ads going through the sporting sections in the paper. Everything is just inundated with sports betting. And when we've got kids that are walking around talking about the game and then talking about things like the point start or the odds, there are many that probably share my view that it's gone too far. As we know, gambling can become an addiction. And having a disclaimer on an ad is bet responsibly, to me is just so far removed from our responsibilities within this. So it can become an addiction. And it's now incorporated in just about every aspect of sporting life. which is why in some ways a dumb mistake that's been made by an AFL player has presented the leadership of the AFL with an opportunity or a path where they may start to limit their relationship with betting companies. Now, in major sports, and I'm sure it's most places in the world, as a professional player, you cannot bet on the game, right? So, period. It removes the temptations from some players maybe to bet against themselves, to bet on the opposing team, to maybe get in the ways of people that want to fix matches. You know, there is a underlying group of people underneath the sports betting markets that want to bet with some certainty, and with that may come some match fixing allegations and whatnot. So I can understand every sporting player, every professional player now can't bet on the game, and that's period, bottom line. And I support that. But also, to be fair, it also removes the opportunity for them to bet on themselves or their team. And history is scattered with stories of legends where teams have bonded by placing a bet on themselves to win the big game or the championship. It's no longer, so bad luck. It isn't allowed. But, you know, by catering for the consequences, I guess, it removes the positive motivation that can be done. So what's happened here? Jaden Stevenson, I think he plays for Collingwood. I'm not much of an AFL supporter. He placed a $36 bet. It was a multiple leg bet that rolled over via a couple of games, right? And when he admitted to it, and when he sort of a throwaway comment in a dressing room was the thing that brought him unstuck, and he was suggested by another player to go have a chat to the boss of the club, and where he admitted it was a $36 bet, but he was hit with a 22-match suspension, and a $20,000 fine. All right, so he was hit with a 22-match suspension, of which 12 matches of those were suspended. So I'm reading between the line. That means that he's out of the game for 10 matches, and he had a $20,000 fine for breaching the rules. Now, 2 of the 7 betting outcomes that Stevenson bet on included himself were in relation to his own performance, and that included to kick a goal or to kick 3 goals or more. And ultimately, he placed the bets with a mate while he was sitting on the couch together. Now, for some people, this is a massive overreaction, 22 weeks for a $36 bet. But the punishment obviously looked at the overall integrity of the sport and the impact on sports betting or the sport itself. And what it's doing now is putting pressure on the AFL to disassociate themselves completely with sports betting companies. And so when we're looking at it, this dumb $36 mistake, which sees a promising player outed for a lengthy period of time, and it also leaves the AFL potentially losing revenues of millions of dollars. Now, I personally believe that this dumb mistake will actually lead to something positive. Sports betting is seriously an industry here in Australia that marks itself as fun and glamorous, but leads in many cases to something completely the opposite: devastation and depression. It leads to severe losses being impacted by families all around Australia. So if this dumb mistake actually helps Australian sports start to step away from the web that's been woven with sports betting, that's a positive thing. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Dumb Leaders podcast. As always, if you want to share a story or make some feedback or commentary, head on over to thedumbleaders.com and click on the contact page. We'd love to hear from you. We get stories all the time. We get stories around dumb leaders. Some we're not allowed to talk about, and we recognise that, and we appreciate people just sharing their stories, and it helps us align the greater purpose for what we want to do with the Dumb Leaders Handbook. So, but others want us to share the story, and of course there's no names, no pack drill, and no way that they can ever come back to you. So if you want to share a story, please just drop us a line at dumbleaders.com. Until then, I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. Dumb Leaders in the News. Do it for yourself. Go out there, go onto Google or Bing or DuckDuckGo, whichever one you use, that search engine, type in Dumb Leaders and you'll be amazed at what pops up. I'll see you all next week. Bye for now.